Hi everyone, this is my public speaking speech on why transgender athletes should not be allowed to compete in sports based on their gender identity. And then before I start, there's my audience, there's my dad, mom, and then brother. Imagine dedicating all of your time towards training and working hard to be the best at your sport, only to then realize on competition day that the game is no longer equal. Across the country, athletes and coaches are facing growing problems that involve who gets to participate in gender-based sports categories. This debate has intensified as policies shift, lawsuits increase, and research raises new questions about fairness and safety in competitive athletics. Today, I will explain why transgender athletes should not be allowed to compete on sports teams based on what a person believes their gender identity is, and why more research is necessary before these policies can be implemented and become fair. My credibility is based off multiple credible reports, peer-reviewed studies, JSTOR sources, and ProQuest sources. I will explain the scientific concerns regarding psychological and physical advantages linked to the sex assigned that is assigned at birth. Next, I will discuss the legal and ethical issues by current transgender sports participation bans. And then finally, I will explain why further research is necessary before allowing gender identity-based competition in sports. First, I'm going to go and kind of explain the scientific concerns involving sex-based physical differences relevant to athletic performance. Research shows that biological sex plays a significant role in strength and performance. A JSTOR article titled Sex Assigned at Birth explains that biological characteristics such as muscle mass, bone density, and aerobic capacity remain significant even after gender transition. These differences matter in competitive sports where strength, speed, and endurance determine the outcomes and the points. A ProQuest article titled Strength, Power, and Aerobic Capacity of Transgender Athletes found that transgender women have much more physical advantages compared to cisgender women, even after hormone therapy is done. A quote from that same article, transgender women athletes demonstrated higher absolute hand grip than cisgender women with no difference found relative to fat-free mass or hand size. These retained advantages raise concerns about fairness when competition categories rely on physical performance rather than identity alone. Now that I have explained the biological concerns, I will discuss the legal and social challenges surrounding transgender sports and participation. According to the article, Gender and School Sports, Federal Action and Legal Challenges to State Laws, states are passing more and more laws that restrict a transgender athlete's participation that goes against Title IX regulations. These legal disputes create a lack of national consensus and highlight how gender identity-based participation impacts school sports and national organizations like the Olympics. Additionally, the article titled The Impact of Transgender Sports Participation Bans shows that while these bans have an effect on transgender individuals, both socially and emotionally, the policies are often created because of concerns over fairness in these sports. This tension between protecting transgender people and also having to maintain competition shows why this is a hard and kind of sensitive topic. I've explained the scientific and the legal concerns, and now I will explain why more research is needed before allowing transgender athletes to compete just based off their gender identity. The article, Transgender Inclusion in Single-Sex Competition, the Case of Beauty Pageants, states that inclusion in gender-segregated spaces must consider both fairness and identity, and also says that decisions should be based off well-done research. While beauty pageants are different from athletics, the same idea goes. Without strong scientific evidence, inclusion poses risk being unfair to one side or another. Because the current research that we have is very limited and it's often politically influenced, people do not have enough information to create regulations and policies that are fair to everyone and all the athletes. Until more detailed studies are completed, athletes should not be placed on teams and compete to where gender identity alone is determining if it's fair to play or not. This could lead to unfair competition, legal conflict, and harm to both transgender and cisgender athletes. In conclusion, this debate is not simple. It requires caution, clarity, and reliable research. Today, I went over the reasoning on why transgender athletes should not be allowed to compete on sports teams based on their chosen gender identity. First, I discussed the biological differences linked to sex assigned at birth that influence a person's athletic performance. Then I explained some of the legal and some of the ethical challenges surrounding existing state laws and participation bans. Finally, I went over the need for more comprehensive and unbiased research before policies can truthfully be implemented into sports and to be able to keep everyone safe and happy. Once again, I believe that transgender athletes should not be allowed to compete on sports teams based on what a person thinks their gender identity is. Thank you for your time. And then once again, there is my audience. Thank you.